Before I go into everything, just quick warning you guys, this video is not going to be spoiler safe for any of the Trials of Apollo books, and there also will be some spoilers for Heroes of Olympus as well, so just be aware of that. Hey guys, so welcome back to my Bookmas 2019 series. This is going to be day 5. And if you've been following this, then you'll know that I did a non-spoiler review of Tyrant's Tomb by Riordan yesterday, but I have a lot to say that is very spoiler heavy. So I am doing a separate video, which is of course this one. So first thing I wanted to say, this book has my new favorite instance of Riordan style smack talk. Apollo calls Emperor Caligula, yes that Emperor Caligula, baby booties. I looked at Caligula. Well, baby booties, your colleague emperor has already agreed. Are you in, or do we terrify you too much? Now, just for some context on where that name comes from, because it seems like a very strange thing to say. It's explained in the series, so if you are reading this series, then you will know where that comes from. But if you don't know the series and you don't know where that nickname might be originating, I'll just give you a kind of a quick rundown of it. So, the name Caligula is not actually his real name. His real name was actually Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, which you'll notice that the name Caligula does not appear anywhere in that title. The reason that he is called Caligula is because his father's soldiers actually nicknamed him Caligula when he was a child, because he'd been given a kind of a mini version of a soldier's uniform and he would walk around the camp dressed in it, and so they would call him Caligula, which apparently means little boots. So yeah, apparently the name of one of the most feared Roman emperors in history was a childhood nickname meaning little boots. Hence my new favorite insult. Now, leading off of the whole Caligula situation, and this is a huge spoiler I'm about to say, so if you are just wanting like mild spoilers, this is not something you're going to want to hear. I was really surprised that 2 of the 3 members of the Roman Triumvirate were killed in this book. There are 4 main villains of this series. There is Python, who we've only really seen a little bit, but that's pretty typical for Riordan's writing style. And then in the first book we also met Nero, second book we met Commodus, third book Caligula. And Commodus and Caligula both died in this book. It makes sense to keep Python and Nero as the main focus for the villains in the last book because they are the 2 that have the most immediate connections with Apollo and Meg, who are our 2 heroes. Nero being Meg's stepfather. Yeah. Very, very, very unhealthy. Calling him a stepfather is very insulting to the title of stepfather, shall we say. But yeah, so that's kind of where Nero's connection comes in. And then Python is, of course, very connected with Apollo. He is a creature, monster, that Apollo beat thousands and thousands of years ago, and that's how he gained a lot of his titles and power. So there's connections that way. So it makes sense that Riordan would want to cut it down to just those 2 for the final book. So this book is kind of the climax of Caligula and Commodus's plot lines. And it works actually really well, but I was not expecting for 2 of the 4 to die in this book. Also, the way they died, holy crap. Yeah, so Apollo basically screamed Commodus to death. It's like, okay, so your powers are starting to come back, which incidentally is awesome because in the previous books we've only got tiny flashes of his powers every now and then in this book it keeps happening over and over again, so I'm really excited to see where that's going in the next book. And then when he's fighting Commodus, he basically just yells a scream / note of sheer rage into Commodus's face, and it destroys him. And that was a little shocking, especially since this is technically the 2nd time Apollo has killed Commodus, so yeah. It was odd. It was a very, very intense scene, but it was probably the best way that plotline could have ended. Also, regarding Caligula's death, I am glad it wasn't actually Apollo that killed him. There was something much more satisfying about it being Frank, especially since, yay, Frank is finally free of his curse! Yes! Oh my goodness! Because for those of you who don't know, Frank has had a curse on him since he was a baby, where there's a piece of wood that he has. When the piece of wood burns down, he will die. And he carries this piece of wood with him everywhere. At the time the book starts, it has a couple of other homes that it has at various times throughout the whole saga, but right now, when the book starts, he carries it. And this book deals with that. As of the end of this book, he is free of his curse, which is great, because Frank only had a tiny little stub of it left, and he's like 15, 16, I'm not sure of his exact age, sorry, but Either way, mid-teens. He's not old enough to be dying because some stupid stick that Hera tied his life force to is burning. Hello, Hera. One of the main subplots of this book is the situation between Apollo and Reyna, who is right there. And I really like how they handle it, actually, because, don't get me wrong, I am a huge sucker for a well-written romance, but I get a little tired of every character in every book needing to be paired off. Reyna is a character that has kind of been in limbo in terms of her romantic status for almost the entire time we've known her. And when I say that, I don't mean she's single, because there's a huge difference between being single and being in limbo, as I would call it. When I say she's in limbo, I mean she technically isn't with anyone, but we know from both what she says and what we can observe of her interactions with other people and what other people say that she either wants to be in a relationship or everyone else wants her to be in a relationship. She actually received a prophecy a number of years before that I believe it was no demigod or God will heal your heart, something like that. I can't remember the exact words, but it was very close to that. And that kind of shattered her because the way it was taken was you will be lonely for the rest of your life. And when I started reading this book, I started to wonder, does that mean it's going to be Apollo? Because he's technically not either a god or a demigod right now. He's technically mortal, but also kind of not. So it was like, does that mean he's going to be her love interest? But I also was kind of uncertain with this because I didn't really see how this chemistry was going to work. So the second Apollo sees her in this book, he kind of has a bit of a fear surge, shall we say. We don't know why at first, but he reveals very quickly that Venus, the love goddess, of course, who also was the one to give Reyna her prophecy, told him a number of years ago that if he ever went near Reyna romantically, she would curse him for the rest of his days in love. And Apollo was already unlucky in love, which is partially his fault. But, you know, some of it is, some of it isn't. A lot of it is his. Let's be fair. A lot of it is his fault. Anyway, I digress. So, the relationship between Reyna and Apollo starts out as him seeing her and immediately just becoming massively infatuated with her, but also being absolutely terrified because, one, he knows that Venus will curse him if he tries anything, and two, he actually really doesn't want to hurt Reyna. It's mostly because he's scared of Venus, but I think there is a part of him that also is aware of what tends to happen to people he's involved with. And on top of that, because of where he is and what he's doing, he has no choice but to interact with her all the time, because he's here on a quest. Reyna is one of the leaders of Camp Jupiter, which means he kind of has to talk to her and work with her, and based on various prophecies, she also has to go with him on his quest a lot of the time. So yeah, that's a thing that's going on for quite a bit of this, and they get along really well as friends, but I was still kind of like, I don't really see where the chemistry is. And then we get to this scene where she finally is alone with him the first time and just goes, okay, what's going on? Like, you've been skittish since the second you saw me. You're constantly looking at me nervously and you seem like just uncomfortable. And he very, very awkwardly tells her about what happened with Venus, and he ends up very, very awkwardly, sweetly, but awkwardly asking if she wants to be his girlfriend, or if he can be her boyfriend. And I was actually really worried going into this scene because I did not know how Reyna was going to respond. And she burst out laughing, like hysterical laughter. And poor Apollo was so embarrassed. I felt so bad for him in that scene. But they did end up reconciling over it, and she actually thanked him because she's been very, very stressed and depressed for a long time. Apparently that was the first good laugh she's had in a long time. But I like the way this ended up resolving, because it basically ends with Reyna going, you actually did heal my heart, Apollo, in that when you asked me if you could be my boyfriend, it basically showed me that I don't need to be in a relationship to be happy. So the book ends with her joining the Hunters of Diana, Artemis, but Diana. It's Diana because she's Roman. And going off into the wilderness with them, and it's great, and I love it, because Reyna deserves all the happiness. She has taken so much crap, so I'm very happy that she got a happy ending, although I'm hoping we see her again, but as of this book, she has a happy ending. And the other relationship that got quite a bit of advancement, shall we say, in this book is Apollo and Meg. It didn't actually change very much, but for the first time they actually started admitting to each other that they did love each other. he tells her that she's basically his little sister, which yeah, she totally is. That's especially interesting given his dynamic with Artemis, because he very much treats Artemis like his little sister, despite the fact that, one, they're twins, so if there is an age gap, it's like a few minutes probably. Two, Artemis acts older than him. She looks younger than him, but she acts much more mature than he does. And three, in Percy Jackson's Greek Gods, when it's outlining the backstory of Apollo and Artemis, Artemis is born first. I don't know if that's actually considered to be the canon version of their births in this, but either way, it's a situation where it's a little weird that he calls Artemis his little sister. He's actually acting like she is his little sister, and it's actually really sweet. I like it, but it kind of indicates that he wants to have a little sister to protect and take care of, and he has that with Meg. Meg is not replacing Artemis, by the way, just to clarify, in any way, shape, or form. They have very different relationships with Apollo, but it is nice that he has that person in his life now. And on top of that, Meg finally, in her own weird way, admits that, yeah, I know you love me. I love you too. Let's go, I don't know, let's go take down Caligula. Meg is not a very poetic person, so the way she handles it is actually really nice, and she balances out Apollo well, because realistically, he's poetic when he's not trying to be poetic, but he isn't poetic when he tries. Now, the last thing I want to talk about in this video, because I can see the timestamp and it's already starting to get a bit long, is Diana and Apollo in this book. Now, I have been wanting since book 1 for Apollo to see his sister again, because it's very obvious that they're close and they love each other, and I haven't seen a ton of them before this, but you do occasionally see them interacting in the previous books, and it's always somewhere between cute and hilarious and just, oh, so sibling-y. Oh my goodness, I love it. And in the first book even, you could see him going like, I want my sister, where is Artemis? Like, I know she can't, like, most likely Dad has forbidden her from coming to help me, so that's probably what's going on, but I still really want to see her. And then in book 2, he runs into one of her servants, the goddess of nets, who has a very complicated relationship with him. It's Artemis's way of keeping an eye on him for all intents and purposes. And then in book 3, he runs into her hunters, which are led by his technically half-sister, Thalia, but yeah, I'm not going to talk about that because it's complicated and odd. So Artemis has kind of been keeping an eye on him throughout the whole series. From a distance, she's not actually allowed to be near him. But in this book, he finally finds a way to summon her in a way that their father can't block her. And he isn't sure for a long time that she's going to be able to come, but she does, and it's great. He is literally almost dead. He is dying. He's turning into a ghoul. And Diana arrives in the nick of time and saves him, and it's wonderful, and I love it. She's very almost stoic in their scenes, but you can tell she really cares about her brother, and Apollo's reaction is just great. Just, hey sis, and faints. He actually tells her he loves her, and it's so sweet, and you can tell by Diana's reaction that is not a conversation they normally have. I don't know if he's ever said that to her. It's been a very long time, so yeah. And then we hear from Thalia, who is of course, Thalia, sorry, I hear different pronunciations. She is of course Diana's lieutenant, so she later is talking to Apollo and just like, yeah, like, she's really worried about you. Diana is very, very worried about you. She can't do anything, but she's terrified that something's gonna happen to you, so please just be careful. Anyway, I should probably stop it there because I can see that this video is getting very long, and I could talk about this for much, much longer. So I'm just going to leave it here, and maybe someday I'll do a video on a specific topic. We'll see. Thank you for watching, you guys. If you have any comments, let me know. Or if you have any thoughts on this or anything I said, I'd be happy to talk to you guys about it. So have a fantastic day and a wonderful December. Merry Christmas. See you later. Okay, I don't know if you guys can see it, but the necklace I'm wearing is actually a Camp Half-Blood necklace with little Pegasus in the middle. So, yeah.